So just as we get close to the upcoming NFL season, there's always obviously some things that get released throughout the media, and one of them being the Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
candidacies coming up. And I know, two people close to your heart, Steve McMichael and Virginia McCaskey, a part of that group that will be eligible. And then one of the big topics of conversation has come about is who's going to be eligible in 2024, and that is going to be obviously a slew of players, but most notably one that's been a topic of much conversation is Andrew Luck. So that is what we're here to discuss today. What are your thoughts on Andrew Luck's career, and just even maybe like a bird's eye view of his short but spectacular career, what his credentials kind of measure up to a Hall of Fame level type of you know credential, I guess.
Yeah, I think to me the biggest thing, Dan, is that if you think Andrew Luck is a Hall of Famer, your best argument is not the stats. Like, I mean, your
100%.
argument is everything that happened in that short period of time. Stats are a part of it. Like, look, in his short career, he had more passing yards than Roger Staubach. You know what I mean? You have those things to try to work into it. But the best thing, and the thing that I would say your best chance for making the case, is the fact of his impact, as short as it was. And look at the team before he arrived, the year without Peyton, and since they've been just meddling in mediocrity with weird quarterback, patchwork solutions. What he did from going from the number one overall pick, so the worst team in the league, to 11-5, 11-5, 11-5 AFC title game. That's like your best argument, right? My big thing with Andrew Luck is this. We weren't doing the show when Andrew was still playing, but this from just us talking about it. Like, I loved Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck to me was one of my 3 or 4 favorite players in the league when he was playing. I would
Definitely.
have
Same.
killed for my team to have drafted Andrew Luck. I think he is, without a doubt, to me, the biggest what if, like, in the NFL over the last, in my lifetime, of like what his career would be. I have full faith that he's a guy that would have a Hall of Fame level career. Um, no doubt, if the injuries didn't go the way it did for him. And he's a guy that is unique because, unlike so many of the other people who leave the game early, he is he seems like above the NFL. He seems like he intellectually, him and the NFL just never mixed in of their own right, in that he is a person that doesn't need the NFL. You never see interviews with Andrew Luck. I know my favorite podcast, the one I know you're aware of, part of my take, like, he's a white whale guest for them. Like, they're the number one sports podcast in the world. And they can't even get Andrew Luck because he lives in his own world, in his own
Yeah, he's
bubble.
a private guy.
A
Yeah. Yeah.
unique individual. I don't think Andrew Luck gives one rip about the Hall of Fame. So that's kind of my bird's eye view, without giving you my full opinion of where I fall on the topic yet. But I just love Andrew Luck. I miss Andrew Luck. Think about if Andrew Luck never retired, with him, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. I mean, he would still be in year 10 now, year 11, like,
Yeah, I mean, he's 33 years old, so
at the end of his prime, like, but still maybe in his prime, like, but entering that transitional part. Him and Russell Wilson, they were the same draft class. So that's an idea to put, and Kirk Cousins. So it's an idea to put that into perspective of like where he'd be in his career. It's frustrating because it's a tough conversation because I love the guy so much, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
I'm surprised that you actually came to that conclusion, because I agree with you as well, and it's extremely tough to
You're
come to
surprised
that
because my love
conclusion.
for Luck. I know. I
Yeah,
love
and
Luck.
I share a very similar affinity for Luck with you. I mean, Grace can attest. I bring it up all the time. One of our like first big dates when her parents came to visit was we went to this kind of cool like Irish fest. And as we were leaving the Irish festival, having a great day, it was awesome time, live music, ate great food. get in the car and I get the notification that Andrew Luck has
Luck
retired.
retires.
And I literally I was like crying in the car, like obviously not sobbing, but I was really sad. I was
Yeah.
really sad because I had like it was obviously the off season, and I just been talking to a bunch of friends about
He was getting
uh,
healthy.
what we were looking forward to. Like he's finally getting healthy, and I was just really excited about what was gonna. I'm not a Colts fan by any means at all,
No.
and yet I was super excited to watch. I mean, he was that group of player that is now Mahomes and Josh Allen and Burrow, of people being really excited to see the next wave of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the face of that, just 5 years prior, and so to have his career cut short was devastating. And he's obviously amazing at the job, and a great guy, so easy person to root for. So that's what makes it tough to come to that conclusion. But I'm going to cue this up here
Yeah, go for it.
so that we can kind of look through this, because it is interesting when you do look. I mean, you mentioned the numbers aren't there, and they aren't. I mean, he doesn't have eye-popping stats. Although the touchdown to interception ratio is not bad. I mean, it's 2 to 1 is it's pretty standard, especially for what he had to go through. I mean, he was never the hyper efficient quarterback. That's never what he was going to be, right? He was going to be a guy that was somewhat of a gunslinger, tough guy that made the big plays in the fourth quarter
Yeah.
when he needed them most. And that's kind of what we see bear out here. I mean, he played 6 seasons over 7 years, missed all 2017 due to injury. And I think we do get caught up in he was injured for so much of his career. He only missed one full season and then a half a season.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, he did play, which
No, the
is not great, but also for how much he got hurt, the guy toughed out a lot in his career.
even just looking at the photos of him throwing the ball, I miss him now. Watching, he
I
look at
know,
those
right?
arms. I mean, he has like the thickest
Yeah, he was
arms. Like he's
jacked.
not
Yeah,
cut. He just was such a
he's just
stocky,
really
big
strong.
dude. And I love what I love about Andrew Luck. I think that the other case you make for is like, why is he Hall of Famer? Look at that. Just play the comeback in the playoff game against the Chiefs. How
Yeah, amazing
magnificent he was. That's one of the greatest quarterbacking performances ever.
of all time.
And it's one of the reasons why Patrick Mahomes is a Kansas City Chief, is because the Chiefs had to play a brand of football that they couldn't win games like that, even though they were a 1 seed and things, because a high seed and winning their division, because just Alex Smith and who he was. But Dan, I think to me the biggest thing, and this will be my caveat, and I know it's the same caveat I said with Philip Rivers, because that's a huge discussion too, is that while Andrew Luck, yes, has a similar career, you could argue, as like a Gale Sayers, where it's like, holy crap, the talent is without a doubt there. The electricity, as far as the highlights and everything, is without a doubt there. Tony Baselli, he just finally got in, but the career is so short. The problem is Andrew Luck plays a position to where longevity does matter. Like, and I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
the,
Yeah.
the rules are just different. Running back, tackle, linebacker, like Luke Kuechly's going to have a little bit of this, but Luke Kuechly, I'm comfortable saying he could be in, because longevity at that position is not as important as longevity at the quarterback position. Quarterback is the toughest position in sports. It's the most scrutinized position in sports. It is the most high profile position in sports, unless you're a star in the EPL, right? Like that is it, a bar none. And so in order for you to make it to the Hall of Fame, I do think longevity has to play a factor in it. And I think for like Philip Rivers, the longevity does help him. The non-win Super Bowl win, the big time win, certainly hurt him. For Andrew Luck, I feel like it's similar. Like he actually, in his short time, had some big wins, but the longevity just wasn't there. And you need that longevity, Dan, to really put up the stats to show that you, as a franchise quarterback, are a part of the storytelling in the NFL and NFL history.
Agreed. To bring back to that point, that argument has been made even for like the long tenured players in the league. the Eli Mannings, for instance, who
Yeah.
that he's a big topic of conversation about whether or not he actually is qualified. You can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning because of his ability
Big
to not
games.
only win 2 Super Bowls for the G-men, but to beat the greatest teams to ever be assembled in the New England Patriots during that time. There are just certain things, unique aspects of players. Big Ben had that
Yeah.
very unique quality to him. John Elway did. These are guys that they didn't win 4 Super Bowls, but and maybe they're not even great because they are clear Hall of Famers. You could talk about other players like Philip Rivers. I think was a good example of a guy who also never won one
Yeah.
and put up really good numbers. But I think if you were to say between the two, who would go in, I would say Andrew Luck over Philip Rivers based on his overall talent at the position and his ability. But I don't think either is a Hall of Famer because we see it here as well.
Yeah.
It's also about how you perform against your peers as well, right? And for all that Andrew Luck did, like if you have a short career like Andrew did, you either have to have, in my opinion, a combination of a couple different things. You have to have a Super Bowl title in there, or you have to have been the best at your position for a
Yeah.
couple years during that time. Gale Sayers was the greatest running back at the time, you know, right up there with Jim Brown, basically, as like who
They
who
were
are the
1 and
best to
1A.
ever play.
Yeah.
You know, Andrew Luck, despite being a phenomenal quarterback, was never an all pro. And he was never in the top 5 in passer rating or, any
Yeah.
of those maybe more holistic metrics. His 2016 season was amazing. He threw for 4,700 yards, most in Colts history, 40 touchdowns to 16 picks. And he had some great
He's
years.
special, but he wasn't special for long enough. And Dan, I 100% agree with you. If you're going to sit here and watch this video and get mad and say, how can you say longevity matters for quarterbacks but doesn't matter for other positions? I'm sorry, I just will never agree with you. Like, playing the quarterback is different. The rules are different. And to get into the Hall of Fame, there needs to be different caveats. Like the playing, like kicker, longevity matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like punter to get in the Hall of Fame, longevity matters. But if you're a star wide receiver, a linebacker, a running back, people that just get hits, a safety who delivers hits, like longevity is different because your physicality and how you play the game and what it does to your body's different. If you want to be a quarterback and play 6 years in the NFL, like Andrew Luck did, Patrick Mahomes has now started for 6 years, and he's only got like 1,000 yards passing more than Andrew Luck through the 6 years. And Andrew Luck is injured for a year and a half of that, we said. So Andrew Luck's stats were almost more impressive than Patrick's to start the career. In a way, you could argue. But what is if Patrick Mahomes legitimately hung him up today, he'd be a first ballot, no doubt, Hall of Famer because of the 2 Super Bowls and the 3 appearances. If you're a quarterback and you only want to play in the NFL for 6 years and you want to make to the Hall of Fame, I need to see a Super Bowl victory or multiple Super Bowl victories or a Super Bowl victory and multiple appearances. You know what I mean? Like, the impact has to be so monumental. And on top of the fact that it has to be you're the reason why they're in the Super Bowl. We know Patrick Mahomes is the reason why they're in the Super Bowl because it was the same exact team. Only what did they change? The quarterback. And the rest of the team stayed the same. Andy Reid, coach, the offense, defense. They changed the quarterback. They're winning Super Bowls. Andrew Luck, the team was terrible. They were the number 1 overall pick. 11-5, 11-5, 11-5. He made it to an AFC championship game. If you would have won a Super Bowl in that time, I think there's a great argument that you'd have for making the case for Andrew Luck. But at this point, it's not going to happen for me. I've always said Philip Rivers is my line of demarcation. If he gets in, which I wouldn't vote him in, then everyone has to be their numbers for non-Super Bowls have to be better than Philip Rivers. He is the numbers guy. If your numbers are better
maybe
than
Matt
him,
Ryan you could put in there as well.
well, and I would put Philip ahead of Matt Ryan. Like, I would just because
Yeah.
the numbers.
I would agree.
And so if that's your line of demarcation, the numbers have to be better than that. If you have Super Bowls, then I don't care about your numbers. But if your numbers are, you're just a numbers guy, then longevity matters, numbers matters, and Philip Rivers, that line of demarcation, I would put Philip ahead of Andrew based on that.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate thing when you're talking about careers of certain guys that just maybe didn't get a fair shake. I mean, Andrew Luck is one of those guys that you could say, you know, really had his back against the wall for the majority of his career, and a large part of this is just he didn't have a good supporting cast. I mean, Philip Rivers can't really say that. They had
Yeah.
some really great teams and like elite players, the Junior Seaus of the world, LaDainian Tomlinson. He had great receivers during his tenure there, and they just couldn't get over the hump. It was like the Charger curse, right? Andrew Luck did a lot with a little in Indianapolis, but at the end of the day, when we getting back to those, elements of if you don't have the stats, you got to have something else. He didn't have this special aspect to where he was so unique in the league that it's an identifying aspect of his play that kind of changed the game in some way. There isn't any of that, and he doesn't have a Super Bowl, and you can say, okay, well, he doesn't have a Super Bowl, but was he successful and was he constantly making pushes? Well, they were making the playoffs, but he's 4-4 in the playoffs in his career, and he threw 12 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. So even in the biggest moments in the playoffs, we don't have amazing success. If he went 6-2 and just never got to the Super Bowl, and then also, led the league for 4 straight years and was the MVP for 2 of those years. Okay, now we maybe start to have a conversation about him being in the Hall despite some of those
Yeah.
shortcomings. But it's just he didn't have any of those, and then on top of it, a short career, and so it's unfortunate. Amazing player, one of my favorite players
Yep.
ever to watch so far, and will always have a special place in my heart in terms of what he put out there on the field and who he is as a person too. He's an easy guy to root for, as we mentioned. But yeah, I think we're both in alignment here. It just doesn't quite meet those qualifications, and I know that's tough for some media pundits and for fans to accept out there. But I also think that overall, Mark, we probably aren't in the minority if you polled most
No,
people. I think they would agree.
Yeah. And again, I think it's an interesting argument. I will listen. I'll be all ears for your case for why he should be in. But I'll be honest, I have been very firm with my line in the sand because I've been preparing this argument for so many years with Eli and Philip Rivers, to where this one's an easy one. Like, he does not fall on my line of demarcation. If you don't have a Super Bowl victory, I need the stats. I need the other things. Or like you said, generationally talent like we've never seen them before. Like, even then, I would argue for Michael Vick over Andrew Luck, because at least you're like, this dude did things we've never seen before. So as much as I love Luck more than a lot of these players, and if I had to start it all over again, I would draft Luck knowing you run the risk of maybe him retiring earlier, but I would try to protect him way better so he didn't have to. I would absolutely take Luck over so many other quarterbacks in NFL history, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
No question. Well said. We are in agreement there. And I think we also would be in agreement that even if he does get into the Hall of Fame, it's not going to be first ballot next year.
No.
So that much we certainly can come to a consensus on as well. But that does it. A fun little exercise into looking at the career of Andrew Luck and whether or not he does meet those Hall of Fame credentials. And you got our takes here. We're interested to see what you have to say as well. So this has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan of the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network. You can check us out, as always, on Twitter, Facebook, at FB Lounge Pod. We're on Instagram and Threads now as well, getting trendy. And check us out, as always, on YouTube. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And go to forfantasysakeqc.com for all of our shows on the network. But for that, we will end this one, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, we've got you covered with full-length episodes weekly all year long, covering news from around the league. And during the season, we'll provide recaps from every matchup. So please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It really helps us out. Thanks for the support.